left North Korea wondering why they had invited us in. We were expected to film only statues and portraits of the president, the great leader, who, although dead, is still president and worshipped like a god, and of his son, the current dear leader. North Korea has one of the biggest standing armies in the world, and yet, aid agencies say, millions are going hungry. But our minders didn't want us to film behind the facade. I was told this is North Korea, the capital, Pyongyang, the city of the well-fed elite with happy, smiling faces singing praises to their leaders. But what's happening in the rest of the country? I had to go to South Korea to find out. Just over 100 miles south of Pyongyang, the South Korean capital, Seoul, couldn't provide a more dramatic contrast. While the North remains mired in the beliefs and limitations of the last century, South Koreans rejoice in the inventions and the gizmos of today.
If I find this country baffling, imagine what it must be like for some 3,000 North Koreans who arrive here every year from the most isolated, uninformed and unconnected country in the world.
Maybe Garam, who fled from the north, was always a South Korean at heart.
Hey, look at this, a cake shop. Should we go in here?
She was arrested for listening to tapes of South Korean music at home and managed to escape before being transported to a labor camp. She arrived a year ago and still can't believe it.
There is so much to eat. You can eat when you like, but in North Korea you can't find food you'd want. We only eat meat twice a year on special days, like Kim Il-sung's birthday. We were told that people in the south were so hungry and they rummaged through rubbish bins and carried old tins with them to collect food in.
Sena arrived 5 months ago and, like everyone in this film who still has family in the north, wants to remain anonymous. All new arrivals spend months in special government schools learning how to cope with the 21st century. In South Korea, there's more broadband connections per person than anywhere else in the world. In the north, people don't have access to the internet, and mobile phones are only for the elite.
What surprised me most here was the internet and access to information, so that everybody can know everything, and there are no secrets. Because of the mobile phone, you can talk to anyone. In North Korea, if you want to get a message to someone, you might have to walk miles.
They both travelled thousands of miles to get here. From Chongjin in the north, across the Tumen River into China, then working in order to raise the money to pay guides to take them on to Laos and across the Mekong River to Bangkok, where they tried to reach the South Korean embassy for help and a flight onto Seoul. Sena told me she was imprisoned in Thailand before she made it. Garam took emergency precautions in case she didn't.
If we were caught by the police, then we would have been sent back to North Korea, which is like a death sentence for us. There'd be no point in going back to live like an animal. That's why we travelled with poison, so that if we were caught, we'd take it and kill ourselves.
Nearly all the defectors say they fled because they were hungry. Here, the new arrivals in white play against South Koreans. You can see the difference in height. A South Korean young male adult is on average 3 inches taller than his northern counterpart. It's the young and the fit who make it here, though they feel guilty about those they've left behind.
식량 사정으로 인해서 이렇게 중국에 가게 됐고요.
I crossed over to China because we had no food and I could swim.
한국에 올 생각은
I left my baby sister behind. I don't know whether she's dead or alive.
좋은 삼촌을 만나서 이렇게 오게 됐습니다.
가장 그리운 거는 저희 어머니가 혼자 계시는데
What I miss most is my mother, who is left living by herself. I worry about her. Missing my family is the hardest thing to bear.
가족에 대한 그림이 좀 제일 큰 것 같습니다.
They have mixed feelings about the two countries.
네, 개인적으로는 저희가 축구팀 때문에 옷을 일단 잉글랜드를
I'm wearing an England shirt because it's the uniform. Both North and South Korea will play in the World Cup. I'll support them both.
We met with another group of recent arrivals. We showed them a bit of what we'd seen in the north, like the kindergarten with its indoor fairground.
Thank you.
And how we were invited into a typical house.
음식이 그렇게 많지 않고 아까 보니까
No, we didn't have that much food. I noticed bananas. I never saw bananas in the north. That table was prepared in advance because you were coming. It's all lies.
준비해 놓은 것 같아요.
영상에서 봤던 그런 평양 시민들이나
The kindergarten kids, they don't appear to have any health problems, and no ordinary kindergarten looks like that. To the north of Pyongyang, things are very different. There's no room to play inside, only outside.
너무나 확연한 차이가 나요.
And the children are very thin and malnourished. There are hundreds of street children, homeless children, just living and dying on the streets.
아이들 같은 경우는 너무 말라서.
And what about the worship of the great leader?
어릴 때부터
From the youngest age, from nursery school, all your life until you die, you're brainwashed. I thought he was God, and that Kim Jong-il was the son of God. Now I think completely differently. What do they mean by saying he's a god? He's just a normal person.
이제는 그렇게 생각하지 않아요.
Many North Koreans have been living here for years. Men like Ha To-kung feel a responsibility to those left behind.
암시장에서 거래되고 있는 달러를 회수하기 위한 목적이 있었다는 것이죠.
They send radio broadcasts with news of the outside world, which can be picked up only on the perimeters of the country, but at risk.
정례 검토에 대해 발표했습니다.
Those detected by the so-called Electrical Wave Inspection Bureau are sent to rehabilitation centres, forced labour camps, like this one filmed secretly in the north.
So they are detained in this labor training camp, and they wake up early in the morning. They're brought out of the prison and forced to work on the street or on this roof.
Those charged with more serious political crimes get sent to a gulag.
According to gulag survivors, in Korea we have tens of gulag survivors, about 200,000 people only in the gulags. And other than gulags, there are labor training camp, rehabilitation centers, including all those prisons. I see about 1 million people are detained in the prisons.
That's almost 1 in 20 of the population are being detained.
About 5 to 10% of the whole populations.
Diplomats and human rights organizations concur, claiming that many hundreds of thousands are detained. Mr. Ha gets news from the north by calling contacts living on the border with China, from where they can pick up a mobile phone signal. We've disguised this man's voice to protect his identity.
여보세요?
아라운드도 있고, 전주구세 원래 한 뉴스에서 보는 데도 있고, 공장도 안 들어가는데 어떻게 걸고리 다 만들어서 있는 자도 없어요. 말도 안 되지. 여기는 물에 아무리 깨끗한 물이라 그래도 한 리터에 9마리 있어요, 9마리. 대장비네. 지금 없습니다. 없는데 이 정도로 살 것이 많이 떨어졌으니까
In North Korea, food is treated like a state secret.
There's no market here. The market is not open at this hour.
People get government rations, but they're not enough. They depend on private markets to survive. But, we were told, the government plans to shut them down. What do the young people think will be the future? Why aren't people rebelling?
그걸 한다는 자체는 자기만 죽는 게 아니라
If you rebel, it would not only result in your death, but your family will be punished. Because the risk is so great, not many people try.
선뜻 그 일을 하기를 싫어하죠.
This young man should know he escaped here after his father, an army officer, attempted a coup and was executed. He says that the rest of his family was sent to a gulag.
저게 빨리 바뀌어야 되고. But society there should be changed. It should collapse so that everyone there can be rescued.
수 있겠다 하는 생각을 좀 많이 했어요. 지금 옛날보다 많이 내부적으로도.
People are listening more to what is happening in South Korea and China and in the outside world. Illegally on the radio, in their own homes. And so their understanding is changing gradually. So I wonder if that is the way that things are going to change.
But back in North Korea, only those who live in the border areas have any link to the outside world. In the rest of the country, there is no contact. There's no civil society, no churches or trade unions of the type which brought down the communist regimes of Eastern Europe. In the capital, Pyongyang, they celebrate the great leader's birthday. An extravagance of fireworks entertains the chosen few. Only those with an untarnished political background can live in the capital city, and they all know who to thank for the spectacle.
Our great father, he founded our country and he brings us happiness.
Elsewhere in the country, if people are lucky, as those who've escaped told us, they may get a rare ration of meat to celebrate the birthday, but without electricity, they'll eat in darkness. But living next door to South Korea, one of the most communications-aware countries in the world, how much longer will it be possible to keep these people in the dark?